self-determination, if you like, political self-determination. If many across Myanmar are fighting for self-determination and Rohingya are often left out of this vision, so what would it actually take to make sure that Rohingya are fully part of that struggle, of that lens, when we look at Myanmar and the pro-democracy struggles in Myanmar?
Well, thank you. First and foremost, thank you to the governments of Malaysia and the Malaysian missions to the United Nations for making this important discussions happen. And it is often very rare that international forums like this that move beyond the Rohingyas through the humanitarian lens, through the refugee lens, and then at one time through a crisis response mode. It is rare that it moves beyond those lenses and go toward the political inclusions and political belongings of the Rohingyas in all means and in all dimensions. So today, I thank Malaysia for facilitating such a conversations to take place at this forum. To get to the questions of the inclusion piece, and then I think I'll take a step backward in the sense that when we discuss about Rohingya political inclusions, we often either stuck at the citizenship level or have a very myopic visions of as if citizenship is the silver bullet for a lot of things, and oftentimes forgetting that that very citizenship might be very very sexy, very famous, like very, very well known, but it's important not to forget that the citizenship questions here address the individual rights issue. It does not address the collective rights issue. And if we step backward, it is important to remember the Rohingyas are not persecuted based on individual identity. They are being persecuted on a collective identity of the Rohingya. So I just wanted to take that into perspective, that when we see these issues of inclusion doesn't just mean granting the citizenships and be and all. It just goes beyond that. It goes a level deeper than that. And until it is clear that when we're talking about the belonging, we're talking about the collective right as one of Myanmar nationalities. And without this recognition, even the most talked over, the most discussed citizenships, it risks being fragile, it risks being reversible, and it risks being subject to political manipulation, as history has suggested that. So I think we need to really take a step backward and see that this is just not a citizenship issue. This is not just granting citizenships, granting, restoring, like whatever. I wanted to take a step beyond the individual citizenships levels and see things as a collective rights, and also go back to the root of the persecutions happen on collective identity, not individual identity. And when we say inclusions could mean emerging, integrating into the emerging political architect, integrating into the decision-making fora, that our fate is discussed, our future is discussed. And I can give an example, current institutions happening like NUCC, currently like NUG, there's a lot of discussions going on. And inclusion, not just as an ad hoc basis, I would say these are inclusions at a structural level where we address that we are fighting the very marginalizations that were structurally excluded. They were ad hoc inclusion in the past, at village level, at town level, at cities level, but it was a structural integration and a structural inclusion, so that we're addressing the root cause and we are going back to how this marginalization has started. So those 2 points as a background of like not just individual, right, but as well as the inclusions at a structural level. With that being said, the representations also in the informal bodies equally matter. Like there are as much as formalities, as much as formal inclusions in the structural matter, as everybody in this room will agree, that a lot of more works and a lot of actual discussions happens in the informal event and in the sidelines, and in the panels, in the side events, and in other coffee chat, to you name it. So I think it's just not inclusions in the structural formal where, well, included on the papers and be and all done. Like inclusions also really meaningful with, as previously Deputy Minister mentioned, with genuine political will and being able like to really making that effort to correct that historical errors. And then in that inclusion, formal, informal, structurals, and I think international communities who are attending here also have a role to play in this. But that roles, I think, oftentimes either mistaken, convoluted, and sometimes like outward harmful, if not helpful. And I think one thing that if I would say in this inclusion pieces, the international community rules, it is that the realization that the structural reform and structural inclusion cannot be imposed from outside. It has to be needed, supported. Like these are coming from processes, these are coming from Myanmar-led initiative, that are Myanmar-owned initiative, that are really working from inside the system. This need to be supported so that structural inclusions and the international actors' support really grow, where Rohingya could become integrated as ethnic nationalities, as equal stakeholder, where the sovereignty and respected right, justice are advanced, so that they're not ad hoc. Sometimes I have history suggests that there are a lot of wrong examples where that this has been pushed too much from the outside that it fractured. So when it comes to the inclusions, I think it has to realize and will acknowledge that a structural inclusion will always come from inside. But again, that insight need a lot of support. That insight will not be able to materialize without support of international actors. So I think there is a very delicate rules to play by the international community. How much we're supporting? Are we hand-holding, or are we hand-forcing, or are we imposing blindly? Are we imposing our own agendas on it? So those 3 points being said, I think the current conversation that's going on in Myanmar, like where a lot of ethnic nationalities having inspiration for bottom-up federalisms, inspirations from local governance, inspirations from having to have a say in the decision-making fora of like where their own fate is being concerned. And I think Rohingya's aspirations and for this is sometimes misinterpreted, sometimes misunderstood. And if I make clear, I think that Rohingya's aspirations to have this the same as everybody else, inspirations for bottom-up governance, inspiration to have a say where our fate is being discussed and where our fate is decided and rules are being done. It is actually not contradictory to the Myanmar's larger visions of bottom-up federalism. It is actually complementary. It's just like everybody else, Rohingya should have a say on this. So with that 3 things being clear, I would give one example, maybe the inclusions of these largely, Deputy Minister Ong Jamu mentions like earlier that Malaysia is championing the inclusions of the Rohingya starting this year during its chairmanship of ASEAN 2025, where the Rohingya were included for the first time as an equal stakeholder through a political entity of Rohingya Consultative Councils, but not just as an individual level or consultations of CSO or the activist level. But I would go one step beyond that inclusions should also needs to be institutionalized in the way that where the chairmanship pass over is not fall down. It should become a standard not just for the Rohingya but all the other marginalized community in Myanmar that they have a say in whatever their decision, whatever their fate is being discussed. And with that being said, I think so the inclusion at 3 points, and clearing that misunderstanding of the Rohingya inspirations is complementary, it's not contradictory. Maybe I will have to conclude with one last point here, where this is mostly for those who are in the room, that we have been always discussing Rohingya issues, but we are oftentimes very difficult to move beyond the humanitarian assistance and call for repatriations and other. I think it's time that I'm thankful to this event, but it's also, I wanted to urge when you discuss this issue to go beyond is as a discussion, as a belonging. Like political belonging as citizens, belonging as nationalities of Myanmar, belonging to the Federal Democratic Union, as equal as stakeholders that with the nationalities, with the ethnic group that has a play as a stance in the union. And we like it or not, Myanmar democratic transitions and the coming up transitions will always be judged. Does it address like the most marginalized issues? Does it include the most marginalized community? And it will come haunt back to us if we're not able to address this, if it does not include Rohingya and other minority who were marginalized largely. And there will not be sustainable peace, and the democracy credibility will be measured likely by this standard. And for the region and for Malaysia and for those, is without credible democracy, there will not be lasting peace. As we are seeing, it was a mere inside issue, then it became cross-border issue, then it became humanitarian issue, and became human rights issue, then became human trafficking issue that goes all the way around the region. So if we're not focusing solely on this root cause and being able to address, it will come back to haunt all of us.
Thank you. I'm going to have to move to our next speaker.